Hi, I'm so glad you're back, and here I am, and we're starting chapter 5, and I'm really excited about that. So today we're talking about the rich, and probably you and I were not rich, but we have more if you live in the United States than most people around the world. So maybe these verses will apply, even though James is really addressing people who aren't believers. So I'm going to first start by reading the verses. I'm going to be doing James 5, 1 through 6, because they're hard to divide so that they're easy to talk about all of them in this one video. I'm actually combining 2 days, so you might want to maybe watch this over 2 days, whatever you want to do. So here we go. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasures in the last days. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned the murdered and righteous person. He does not resist you. So here we go. These are hard verses, and I'm going to try to help you understand them a little bit as I've been studying these, and that will help you in your study. And I hope you're writing all these verses out each day. I love doing that, and it helps me to slow down and internalize what God's saying, and I usually really feel the presence of the Lord as I copy them out. For me, it's just like a wonderful exercise. It's so simple to do. Your muscles in your hand do build up, and just a few verses that you write out a day. That's my little thing that I'm encouraging you to do today. James is writing to the Jewish people who were scattered out through the world, or the known world at that time. And today, people still read James the world over. And so James is still addressing people, and not just Jewish people, because if you're like me, you're not Jewish. And so these verses speak to me. And even though he's speaking directly to people who aren't believers and saying what will happen in their case, I can get some warnings from these things not to get too taken up by what I can buy at Walmart or wherever, because these things are temporal and they won't last for eternity. That's what being temporal means. It means it doesn't have eternal value. It just has value while you're here on this earth. So these verses are about the misuse of wealth, or the misuse of money, and the wrong attitudes that we can get about money and towards our material goods, and even our goals for our jobs, or our entrepreneurship if you're into working online and having your own business. There's too much out there that encourages you to get wealthy and to gain wealth, and it all amounts to how we use it. It's not that you can't be wealthy and have money. So here we go. One of the things or approaches to money is typical, and the other is outright defiance. One can be the believer's godly use of money, and the other can be outright defiant that I'm living for the now and I'm going to enjoy my life, have all these things to help and make it easy and enjoyable so I can enjoy the moment now, because I won't have these things in eternity. And believe me, even a non-believer has those things in the back of his mind, and even though he thinks he doesn't realize that. So here's a little story. Okay, one person is saying, I'm living for the now and I intend to have a good time. The hereafter isn't here yet. So that's that person's perspective. The second person says, no, I'm living for the hereafter, for the eternal. But I wonder if the here has a good deal to do with the after. So the first one is a non-believer, and the second one is the believer's perspective. And let that sink in. Replay it if you need to catch the whole gist. Okay, James is talking to the rich, and there are three obvious signs of wealth. Number one is food, and it rots, especially if it goes bad before you eat it. Okay, number two is clothing, and it becomes moth-eaten. The moths come in the winter and can get into your clothes, and it eats them, and besides the fact they wear out and you have to buy new ones. Okay, the third one is precious metals, like gold and silver are ones that James mentioned, but you know, and there are other ones, but they corrode. Those things aren't so different. What people that have money have great displays of the food that they're eating and the restaurants they eat at, the overpriced restaurants that have a beautiful presentation of the food. Their clothing is a way that they, what they're wearing and everything. And the precious metals, the rings that women wear to display their wealth. And even if you don't have wealth, you will have this beautiful ring with a beautiful setting with your diamonds or pearls or whatever. So things aren't so different, right? So these verses apply. Okay, number three is that James does not address these people who are rich as brethren. That's why we know he's primarily not talking to believers. And he informs them of the impending judgment that they will have for their attitudes and the way they are living out their wealth. And what this will mean to them when their life is over. So he's saying that their wealth will eat their flesh like fire, and that these people got their wealth through fraud, often through just any means that they can get it through, even if it's not the right way, and if it's deceitful and whatever. And their cries reach the ears of the Lord. I don't really know what that means. If you know, tell me in the comments. I didn't have time to go into each one of these, but these are things that you can go through, and I can, to get a little deeper. So we're going to move on. The fourth one is 4 indictments against the rich and how they lived on the earth in their wealth, number one is that they lived in luxury, and number two is that they were self-indulgent in their wealth. It was for self and not wealth to bless other people. And number three is that it fattened their hearts in the day of slaughter. 4, they condemn the righteous person. And you see that a lot, especially in our society today, where people who are godly, who are believers, are looked down on. The things that we stand for are put down, and they don't even give you the freedom to express it. Even on Facebook, those things are often blocked from the algorithms. Okay, number 5 is they murdered the righteous person. You can see where people are murdered for their faith, or martyred is another word. Okay, the poor, the godly, did not resist the rich. Okay, so this is something that I'm sure you're wondering as you are listening, especially maybe if you have a little bit of money. Is it wrong to have wealth? Is it wrong to have money? James does not address this issue, and I'm going to reference some verses that you can look up on your own time to go deeper into this. Okay, James instead addressed how they got their wealth, through fraud and illegal means or deceit. Okay, he tells them that their good times will not last. They will, or actually our good times, even if we have money, we know as believers that we might have money today, but it might not last. Our circumstances might change. Our riches might not last. And it's referenced back in James 1:10 through 11. I'll put those verses referenced below. And James is calling us as believers to have a better attitude about money and to have an eternal value, that our wealth should be to benefit eternal life of us and others, maybe in giving to the church and to missions and things that will extend into the future, the eternal future, and that the eternal life is much more important than money and wealth. And that's referenced in James 2, 1 through 9. James repeats what he's talking about through the book of James, doesn't he? Okay, so this is something to remember, to be content in whatever condition we find ourselves in. That is from Philippians, that thought is from Philippians 4:10 through 12. And to be content whether you have plenty right now, plenty of food, plenty of clothes, plenty of whatever, having to do with how well you can live your life here because of money, or because you want or don't have as much money right now, because you could have more money than you have right now because you run up short, or you have to live with less to come up within what you have each month. So those are the thoughts that these verses have given me that I'm sharing with you. And thank you for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.